Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. We will now call the Monday, January 5, 2015 City Council meeting to order, and we'll now have the roll call and determination of quorum. Charlene?
Scott. Here. Drew. Here. Lewis. Here. Doyle. Here. Wright. Here. Estes.
Here.
Nordstrom.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Weifenbach.
Here.
Lorente. We have quorum.
Thank you. We will now recognize Vicki French from the Agape Spiritual Center, who will deliver the invocation for us. You are welcome to participate, but not required. Good evening.
Good evening. In the tradition of my faith tradition, I'm calling this an evocation because the belief is there is not a place where the infinite does not dwell. So I'm not calling in anything that hasn't already been here in its fullness and its presence. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for everyone who followed the call to be here, for their agenda items, for the council members who stepped into their sacred yes of serving their community, for the mayor who said yes and whose population supported each and every single person to be here. So I'm grateful for this infinite presence. I'm grateful for calling it love. I'm grateful for calling it peace. I'm grateful to call it harmony. I'm grateful to call it wisdom and intelligence and divine beauty. And so I'm calling it forth as each member today on this incredible council that supports the city of Rapid City and its expanding growth to become just the highlight of South Dakota and its treasures for what it is calling forth from each of us. So I bless this agenda, each item on it. I bless the open heart of which this is communicated from these people who stand here, convicted with their passion and purpose. And I bless these council members who open them up to new ideas and expansion of this incredible city and beautiful. And so I just simply call this good, this meeting very good, and simply say, Amen.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation, under God, justice for all. And now is the time for the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions or changes to tonight's agenda? Motion by Scott, second by Estes to adopt the agenda as is. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on to general public comment. I do not have any general public comment items. Have I missed anyone? Last call. Okay. We will now go to public comment for items 1 through 49. We have 3 speaker request forms, 2 on items 35 and 1 on item 44. We'll first go to the 2 speaker request forms on item 35. We'll first recognize Suzette Cooney.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Suzette Cooney, the Membership Coordinator for the Rapid City Downtown Association. I just wanted to come and say that the Rapid City Downtown Association, as well as Summer Nights, has established a partnership. We feel that this is a very positive thing, as 10% of the net proceeds will go to the Downtown Association to help with promotional programs for retail events in the non-summer months that will provide us the ability to do things that are focused on people that don't necessarily benefit from Summer Nights. Also with that, we will have established liaisons on both Summer Nights Board as well as RCDA to keep the communications open. We have spoken with the majority of the people that will be impacted by the proposed street closures for the permit tonight, and overwhelmingly we have some positive support there. Of course, not everybody's on board, but we can't make everybody happy all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to David Goodwin, item 35. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Dave Goodwin, Vice President of Summer Nights. Do we have slides available or no? Just kind of wanted to speak a second here about our permit for this year. This is probably revision, if you see the top right corner, it's probably revision 15 or 16. We went back the last couple of years and just kind of revisited a lot of the conversations we've had. And came up with the best layout, the best plan that we could that is not only for Summer Nights future, but also retailer oriented. You'll see that we used to take the whole block from 6th to 8th, and this event permit that we have forward in the orange will close at 5:30, allowing St. Joe traffic to continue pretty much up until 5:30 maybe 5 o'clock, depending on when we work with the police and decide the time to close it. But basically what we're not doing is towing cars on both ends of that. Traffic can still flow around the event. So if somebody's stopping at one of these retailers, we're not going to interrupt that retail business that's going on. Talking to all the 7th Street businesses, everybody was overwhelmingly supportive of this plan. Again, 7th Street will close at 3 o'clock. That gives us time to set up our vendors, the food people, to get their stuff cooking. But then come 5:30, we can close off St. Joe, have our footprint, and be sustainable. So next slide, please. The parking impact for this is 30 spots in St. Joe and 40 spots in 7th Street. So considering what we've done in the past, this is a huge step forward, and I really think this is a good situation going forward. Again, we're asking tonight for approval for this permit, and we're hoping possibly to get a multi-year permit out of this. We really feel that we've got it down now. We're obviously working with the police. I think we have a plan that can go forward, and so we're not constantly back here trying to reinvent the wheel. So thank you, council. We're available for any questions.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 44, and we'll recognize Robert Cook. And item 44 is regarding the powwow grounds and the request for an extension of time to March 31 of 2015. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening. Yes, thank you for this opportunity to speak. Just received confirmation from Mark Van Norman, who works with the Alliance of Tribal Tourism Advocates, that they have secured $250,000 in funding, $150,000 from the Shakopee, Mdewakanton Sioux Tribe in Minnesota. $100,000 was just passed by the Oglala Sioux Tribe Tribal Council. Remember, it was in committee before, now it passed through council. He's in communication with Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, and Harold Frazier, the tribal president, is in support of $100,000 towards this project too. So we're getting the funding necessary to secure the funding necessary for the movement on this project. Once again, I just asking the council for this 90-day extension through March in order to secure the funding. Pat Wiss has revised the construction of the amphitheater to 1.575, so that's went down with that revision. So I think this is a much needed project for this community. It's going to be self-sustainable once it gets its feet on the ground. We're working. I met with the Journey ED and the board president the other day, as Richie suggested, and met with them and sat down and to fill them in on the project since they're new to the Journey Museum board and they're very excited to work with us. We kind of went over some of our next steps and action items in moving this forward. I'm going to be doing a full presentation to the board of directors at the next meeting. So I think there's a new, excitement with it. Definitely, we work best under pressure. We're going to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and please give our regards to Daphne.
Thank you.
We do not have any additional speaker request forms for items 1 through 49. Have I missed anyone? Public comment is now closed for those items. Any council members or staff like to remove any items for separate consideration? We'll first go to our City Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 18, please.
Number 18, Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Items, I got several of them, 35, 38, 39, 42, 43.
Go to Jerry Wright.
Item 4.
Item 4. We'll go to. Darla Drew.
Item 44.
Item 44. Amanda Scott, you want to pull the rest?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. As I warned you before, I was going to, but everybody else has already pulled mine,
Okay.
so I'd like it noted, this is the one night I'm not pulling anything off the agenda.
All right. We have 4, 18, 35, 38, 39, 42, 43, and 44. Do we have the motion to approve the balance of 1 through 49? Motion by Estes, second by Scott. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. We are now on item number 4, and we will go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 4 is to confirm the reappointment of Peter Newman and the new appointments of Eric Braun, Linda Marchin, and Karen Bowman to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Scott, second by Drew. And would you like to retain the floor? No? Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
I just want, as we discussed earlier today, I want to make sure that the makeup of this board will reflect the concerns that we have had as a community in the recent lawsuit where this board was sued and lost, and that we become a little more diligent in the process of that office. And I hope that new members will do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amanda, would you like to speak to that too? Oh, you had your light on. No? Okay. I'd like to say a few words before we proceed to the vote on this item, and I want to thank Alderman Wright for bringing this up. We've had an issue with the zoning board of adjustments in automatically granting appeals above the objections of staff nearly every time. Now, we know we don't want rubber stamps. Okay, but that's not the point here. The point here is that we had a situation where we the city lost a court case badly, cut and dry, because the zoning board of adjustments made a decision that was simply wrong. And there have been other decisions that have caused consternation as well. I've met with all of these folks that are being appointed. Peter Newman is a reappointment. He was not there the day of that decision, and he has pledged to help set the new tone for the board. And the three other commissioners that are being appointed to this board are all planning commissioners, and that's by design. And just so everyone understands what my agenda and my vision is, I would love to someday be able to do what other cities have done and dissolve the zoning board of adjustments and have the planning commission act as the zoning board of adjustments. By state law, the zoning board of adjustments is still quasi-judicial, so the planning commission would have to do their other items and then adjourn and then reconvene as the zoning board of adjustments. We're not prepared to do that now because it requires a number of ordinance changes. We'd have to look at the size of the planning commission and the size of what the new zoning board would look like. But in the interim, we are experimenting with having a much stronger connection between the planning commission and the zoning board of adjustments, and I think that will be a positive for everyone involved. And again, please know I'm not asking for a pendulum swing the other direction. We have an independent board for a reason. However, the concerns have been noted. We'll go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I have a question for our city attorney.
Go ahead.
Since Rapid City's been incorporated, how many times has that happened? That the zoning board of adjustments got sued or? Okay.
I mean,
Can't recall, so.
well, I mean, since Rapid City was incorporated in 1880
Or
or
since.
so, I mean,
Yes, it is.
I don't think anybody would have that information. I wouldn't say it was something that happened frequently. Has it happened? Yeah, probably every couple of years. I would point out the council has made some decisions that have gotten reversed by the courts as well. So let's not.
More times than them, so thank you.
But there is a point where, every couple of years we have to do a training because people need to just be reminded what the rules are, and we've probably reached that point. And at the same time, there's a balance between having continuity and that institutional knowledge on the board, and sometimes having people, the board had been the current makeup for quite a long time, and sometimes change isn't a bad thing either. So,
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Thank you. And it was 1882. The paperwork didn't get completed until 1883 because it got lost in Pier. So we have a motion to approve item number, or we have a motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are now on Item 18, and we'll go to Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 18 is acknowledge Capital Improvement Program Committee monthly update for November 2014. I move to acknowledge.
We have a motion to acknowledge by Lewis and a second by Scott, and we'll first go to our City Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption. Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to point out that what is attached to this agenda is the November report that was actually given to the CI committee in December. We are always a month behind. These reports are based on what was actually paid out, so cash basis versus accrual basis. So these reports do not show any monies that have been committed or programmed or even just accrued as we have the bill but we haven't paid it yet kind of thing. And so when we have 3 council meetings in December to pay bills, this number should be changing substantially between the November and the December reports. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Also, part of the reason that there is constantly a balance on these projects is that you are required to have all the money in place before you can award a bid. So there are some items that they get an allocation every year. One of the things that comes to mind would be like the cemetery irrigation or paving, and where they get like $35,000 a year. Well, they accumulate that year after year until they have enough money to actually do a project. And I believe they're actually working on one of those right now. So those are a couple things that I'm aware of. If you have project-specific information or you want project-specific information, the people that have the majority of the carryover amounts are here to answer those questions.
Go to Dale Tech. Would you like to talk about it from a public works perspective since that's the largest portion?
Certainly, thank you. I would, Mayor. If you look at the report linked to item 18, it shows roughly $14 million worth of carryover for public works projects, primarily CIP for streets, drainage, miscellaneous. I guess the primary reason for that is we have a lot of large public works projects that are multi-million-dollar projects that aren't completed in a year's time. We have to have the money in the bank, as the finance officer stated, prior to we even designing the project. On these large public works projects, we might have a design window of 6 to 9 months, followed by right-of-way acquisition, which could last anywhere from a week to 6 months, and then up to a 2-year construction window. So if you look at the specific capital improvements line item for streets, there's a $4.5 million project for Seeger Drive. That's currently under construction. It started in September. We've paid very little of it. I would anticipate we'll pay most of that in the year 2015. I believe project completion will be in October. We've been working on that project for over a year just to get the design, the right-of-way acquisition, and now finally in construction. Last year, I believe, Public Works Department, we bid about $42 million worth of work. That includes everything in the CIP for streets, drainage, miscellaneous, as well as water, wastewater, and vision fund projects. So I believe last year we had about $18 million worth of carryover. So every year we're going to carry over funds because of these large projects that we have that are go beyond the scope of 1 year. So I'd be happy to address any project-specific questions if the council has any.
Dale, could you specifically talk about the $600,000 for streets and the $200,000 for panel repair?
Absolutely. We have actually three line items. Street rehab, we have 2 line items in the CIP, as well as a collector and arterial maintenance line item. What we do is bid specific projects under that, and those projects don't show up on the CIP list. We use the same CIP number. I got a list from my street engineer today. We have encumbered all of those funds through December. There was 2 projects that were bid in December that I believe we've overspent actually by about $30,000 for those entire $2.1 million worth of street rehab and collector and street arterial maintenance. So we're very aware of those funds and that they need to be spent, and we need to get the projects out the door to make our streets better for our citizens, and we've accomplished that.
Thank you. We'll now go to Alderman Jerry Wright.
I'm going to address the issue that brought this to the head, and that's the reporting format that we as the council receive. And I understand all of that, Dale, and I understand, and I've read the detailed reports, but let's put the eyeglasses or the perspective of the city council member. And this is where I want staff and the mayor with his staff to change this. We meet, and what bothered us over the last few months is that we see a tremendously large balance, which we take as a cash balance of November 30th report was $17,562,000. That's a chunk of change. As members of the council, we are not, we are privileged if we want to dig deep enough to look at the detail, but a lot of us are not project managers, we're not staff and so forth, so we rely upon the reports that we receive. We also expect that if money is allocated for a project and the project can't get done, maybe the money should be moved around and so forth so we can get better bang for our bucks. Because number one, if there's $17 million sitting in the bank making 0.5% interest and we're paying 5% increase inflationary costs, maybe we should be doing the projects that we can get done and move that money forward to something else that's delayed. Is everybody following me on this? I think the reporting is what is weak. And we brought this up, and I can tell you as a council member, fortunately or unfortunately, I had great experience in studying details because I was a division manager and I did watch that detail. But these people up here have the job of looking at the big picture. And we deserve a better report and better information at this committee and more accurate and more responsible reporting telling us exactly, and this isn't just you, it comes out of finance and from every department that has anything to do with this program or any other. We need to know accurately what's involved. When we look at a budget and there's money spent and there's a balance left, we have nothing to go by except for there's a $17 million or 60% of the budget left over. It would take a little more effort, maybe a lot more effort, I don't know, to reflect what's programmed or what's encumbered, but at least it would be a more accurate number, and we as a council could make our decisions accordingly. We're working hard politically to get more money for you. And when we see a balance like that, we're sitting, okay, what's going on here? If there's $17 million set towards the end of the year, do we really need the money? And I know we do. Matter of fact, I know we need more. But it's hard to justify when these facts are laid before us like that. All I'm going to ask out of this whole thing, and the other council members can chime in, is that we get a better format. I know I hear pushback from encumbrances and so forth, but you know, if there's a $4.5 million encumbered against Seeger, I understand that. Just show it as project encumbered, or if you got money that's tied into Omaha Street for drainage and DOT delays it, I understand that. But give us the numbers that reflect that, all of you. This is anybody involved with the process, because I don't like it. It's not good reporting. It's not very accurate to us as members of the council. I don't think I need to say any more. I think the rest, if they want to chime in, will say it. And I'm willing to help and assist, but this question has fallen on deaf ears for the last several months. I think other members of the CIP committee would, at least council members, would agree with that. Thank you.
Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mayor. A question for Dale, if I could.
Go ahead.
Dale, on some of this balance, does any of this represent any money that we had for companion project with the DOT that they've now set farther out?
Actually, for 2014, everything that we show in there, I believe the Jackson Boulevard project, which Phase 2 has been let, they won't start working on it until next year. So that is one item that you see there for about $1.1 million. As far as anything else being pushed out, there's nothing in the current year that has been pushed out other than the Jackson Boulevard project, which hasn't started construction yet. There are future out years. They've delayed some of the other projects. West Chicago, I believe, comes to mind that they're kicking out a year or two. That doesn't affect our current year carryover. That affects our 5-year capital improvement plan, and we'll make adjustments to that when we adopt the new 5-year plan sometime late spring, early summer.
Thank you. I guess that was one of the concerns I had is I just happened to be aware that the state, I think in 17 or 18, they were going to do Omaha Street from First Interstate Bank to Pioneer, and now I got a letter and it's going clear out to 21. And, and we set aside companion money for our part of the project, and they do that. I mean, that money sits there and we lose we lose buying power as that money sits there, and you know, you guys are forced to have to regroup and reallocate that money. So just, you know, with everything that's happening to the DOT's bidding woes and stuff coming in way over, I was just curious if that had had an impact to date, but I'm sure you got to keep an eye on it in the future. So anyway, thank you.
We'll go to our City Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption. Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to address Alderman Wright's concerns on the reporting, as was discussed in the last CIP committee meeting, we took notes as to some of the items that they wanted to see on this, and you won't see it for the December reports being reported in January, but we intend to make those changes for the 2015 reports going forward. It will be a collective effort. It will not come from just my department because we're not the ones that track the project specifically. We just track dollar amounts and totals. And so that's part of the disconnect. When you look at this report, this comes from finance. But where all the projects are, that's not where we come into play. That is left in the hands of Public Works, Parks and Rec, Fire Department, Rod Johnson with doing the roof repairs. Those people have to communicate with us to be able to provide better information to you. So, but we have committed to making these reports more what you guys wanted. This is what they've wanted in the past. It's worked for those in the past. I understand that what has always happened and what's always been provided doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work forever. So we're more than willing to make those changes. If you have any more suggestions than what was given at the CIP committee, please forward those to Tracy Davis and I so that we can make sure that they're incorporated into what we present to you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be quite as hard on staff as Alderman Wright. So if I may ask a question of Pauline Sumption.
You may.
Pauline, I was looking back over the last 3 years on just the November reports because of the concerns that Alderman Wright brought forward. Those look to be very consistent year after year because the dollar amounts appear to be in general, very, very similar each year. That is being carried over. But my question has to do with the January report. I'm not seeing that. Is that anywhere in there, or am I just missing it?
Typically, you won't see a January report until probably about March, just because everyone is doing their carryovers, figuring out where their projects are in the process, and updating all of their 5-year plans. And so there is a delay when you actually do get to see the January numbers. So,
in other words, the carryover will show up someplace along the line.
Correct.
And I apologize, I didn't look for the February reports, but where can I look to see where that carryover would be transpiring?
We typically will actually have an agenda item on CIP for carryover amounts, and those months usually vary just depending on how long it has taken and where we're at with staff levels. But usually about the March timeframe is when we try and do those carryovers.
And then I just also want to applaud the staff that's starting to work on the links that we were talking about already. As I know that some of the staff are aware of the concerns that Alderman Wright has brought forward, and they are working on the links that would be able to address some of his concerns on it. And I guess that's what I'm interested in, is trends, first of all, because I was looking at the last 3 years, and they look very similar. Reports are so close each year, the same amount of carryover. So the next point would be addressing that concern that I have is where does that show up as far as the carryover? And that, I think that's what you folks will be working on.
Correct.
Thank you.
We'll be working on that. And I actually have started already working on that. I just needed some more revenue numbers to make sure that everything was in balance.
One more question for you. I assume you have all the guidance or direction that you needed from the CIP committee members?
Unless there's something else that they would like to see in the reports, I think that we took pretty good notes at the last CIP meeting.
Agreed. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Alderman Jerry Wright.
Yes, I am a little harsh on staff, but you know, we depend on you, and it's necessary that we get absolutely good information so we can make good decisions. So thank you. The other thing that the council needs to do henceforth, and we can't speak for future councils, but we need to bring this up, I need to bring this up tonight, is that if our staff makes a commitment and we agree to it, to program out years, for instance, the fire department says we'll drop the paving, but we'll move that money forward to 3 years out, and the committee agrees to it, then we as a council need to honor that and accept that, and the programming has to reflect that. In other words, it's programming that we live by. And I just think that, I just want to reiterate that it's so important that we get good information so we can make good decisions. And I will say no more, and I'm looking forward to happy days ahead. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now on item number 35, and we will go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 35 is to approve the special event application of Rapid City Summer Nights and Arts Entertainment Festival. Move to approve.
Motion, and we have a second by Doyle, and just so everyone's on the same page, the motion is for a 3-year license, or event permit, 3 years.
Oh.
No, isn't it? So what came from committee, I'm glad we're having this conversation. So can you clarify your motion? Is it for the three years or one?
My motion was for 3 years, as I understood. That's what.
Do we have a second for his motion for 3?
I'll second it.
We'll go to, and Jerry Wright has seconded it, so.
You can have the floor.
Well, you can have it, 5 and 6 people, you can, or a couple people,
Thank
you
you.
can have it.
Thank you.
You may keep the
Okay.
floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I assumed it was, I'm only the chairman of the committee, what do I know? But I thought we came out of there with a 3-year multi-year permit. Mr. Laurenti, okay, Mr. Laurenti's not here this evening. But anyway, I guess my point is, I guess this has been hammered out by the downtown people pretty well, and police and fire on board. So less time we got to deal with this, the better. I'd rather just give them a multi-year event to quit having this conversation every year, as long as this many people put this much time into it. It seems like we have a pretty good balance. I mean, you can't make everybody happy, but at least some of the downtown people have been, accommodated, and I definitely appreciate that. So anyway, that's my motion, so thank you.
Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. That was the question I was going to be bringing up, is from the Legal and Finance Committee. We did have the question about a multi-year permit, and if I can direct a question to our City Attorney, Joel Landine, on the multi-year permit. And so just to make sure that I'm clear and everybody else is clear on this, for being a multi-year permit process, we'll okay it for the first year, and then the police chief will do the administrative oversight for the following 2 years?
Sorry, I can't get my button to work. No, I think if you approve it for 3 years, that as long as they're doing the same thing that they propose now, they can continue to do it for 3 years unless they violate the permit. And that, under the ordinance, that's the only way to undo the permit. I know there were some other questions about reviewing it. I did some legal research on it. I think what you could term it as is a license to use the street, which is different than, say, an easement. And under the law, a license is revocable at any time. However, I think because the ordinance says you can only revoke the permit if they violate it, and I have heard the representatives of Summer Nights say several times that they're waiting on your decision because there might be some investments they made. I think that if you grant them a 3-year permit and then next year somebody is unhappy, you decide to review it again and then pull it, it's going to be a problem, because they're going to argue, well, we've expended money, and I don't think we want to get into that fight. So if you want to review it in a year, then I wouldn't approve it, so that I think you would make clear that you're reviewing it, but then you're really not giving them the multi-year permit either. I mean, I can understand why, this has obviously been debated every year, and there's been talk for several years of trying to get a multi-year permit to avoid this discussion every year. But I would just caution you that if you want to look at it again in a year, if somebody complains, then you probably shouldn't approve a multi-year permit. If you do approve a multi-year permit, I think you should be prepared that next year, if somebody comes forward and is unhappy, that you're not going to readdress the issue unless there is a violation of the permit.
Thank you. And if I can direct my next question to the chief of police, Carl, could you address the question or concern that you brought up, or maybe the issue that you brought up at Legal and Finance had to do with the traffic conditions on the outside of this perimeter? In general speaking terms, it had to do with Mount Rushmore Road?
Yes, from the picture that was up previously, if we could put that back up again. For eastbound traffic on Mount Rushmore Road, the question is how are we going to handle that traffic? And the answer is that we would intend to detour traffic at Mount Rushmore Road. However, through traffic for local businesses would continue to be allowed in the area through the alley. There were some green arrows on a previous slide of this. And then if I could add one other thing too, is I just wanted to point out that on the letter from Summer Nights, it says that they would be willing to stipulate in order to protect public safety that the street layout could be altered by the Rapid City Police Department and or the Rapid City Fire Department. And that's in reference to their request for a 3-year event permit. And I think that would be a fair stipulation, and they've been very good to work with, and we're very pleased that they were able to come to this agreed upon proposal.
Could you read the stipulation one more time, Chief?
In order to protect public safety, the street layout could be altered by the Rapid City Police Department and or the Rapid City Fire Department.
Okay. And that's part of the motion. We'll wait till the motion maker comes back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And then last, what I'd like to do is congratulate and thank the two groups that were heavily involved in this, the Summer Nights and the Destination Rapid City, and the teams that were put together to bring this forward. I applaud you for actually coming together as one voice, which I was part of that request, and I thank you for that. And hopefully my colleagues will support you in your effort, because I don't, at this point, with that stipulation that the Chief of Police just read to us, I can support what we're trying to get to, or to get to and achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie. We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Chief. You answered my question. I support the 3-year permit with that public safety stipulation.
Thank you. Alderman Charity Doyle.
I was starting to think you cut me off for good or something. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, who's the new president of Summer Nights?
I'm the president.
You're the president. Who was the gentleman that spoke?
Our vice president.
And the name? I didn't catch
David
it the first
Goodwin.
time around. Thank you. It sounds like, Mr. Goodwin, you did a lot of that one-on-one with the business owners, and I think that's what people have been asking for from day one. I, for one, am thrilled at how this has come to pass. I mean, no nasty phone calls, nobody up in arms, no pitchforks, no anything, and I've been super excited about that because I would get those phone calls and those emails and people angst and, you know, meh, 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 meh. And, you know, a lot of it was valid, some of it was just bad blood, and I think you did a lot to reset that and clean the slate, and I'm delighted about this plan. I am, however, concerned about the 3 years, and that's only because this is a new layout, it's a new plan. We don't know what problems we might face that we don't know about. I know it's been well thought out, but there's always something. And I would hate to have you guys put in the position that the city attorney mentioned, where you're planning out 3 years because you have a 3-year permit, and now there's a problem that is beyond the scope of a police chief or a fire chief decision. So that's my only reluctance, but I am giving you guys, all of you, just major thumbs up for the work that you did coming together and hearing people out and working to mitigate and solve and just kind of get everybody on the same page. And I think I'm excited to see what the event's going to do this year. But again, I am concerned about the 3 years. My preference would be give this 1 year, then we can work out. Everybody's going to still be accountable. They're going to be still working together, still keeping those lines of communication open so that those relationships that are so new at this point are going to have time to really gel. To keep those lines of communication open so that we don't go back to where we were with that. That would be my biggest concern and my really only concern at this point. I'm very delighted with what you guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alderwoman Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I am also happy with the workability that the two organizations have come together. Personally speaking, the plan looks good to me. But I don't have the knowledge in order to forecast what the traffic flow and what the pattern will be and how it will work. Because as Alderwoman Doyle did say, oh shoot, I was going to make a motion and now I can't. So I'll come back to that. But as far as that goes, as Alderwoman Doyle said, this is a new footprint. It hasn't been tried out. Portions of it have been, but a lot of it hasn't. And as far as a stipulation that the police chief already commented on, he already has it right. So that's not a stipulation. He can do that at any time due to public safety. We've covered that before in these discussions year after year after year. So as far as that stipulation, I appreciate you bringing it up, Chief, but I'm fully aware you already and the fire chief can already pull that trigger anytime. Even if we were to approve this permit for 1 year, if there presents a problem, we expect the chief of police and the chief of fire to maintain our public safety. So the stipulation in my mind, take that off the table. That's not a negotiating point. That's a given. So I would recommend and I would support any of my peers, because I will dial back in here, to make a recommendation that we approve this for 1 year. I'd like to see it done in good faith and then go ahead and okay the 3 year. My also understanding for tonight was if you read the agenda items, not necessarily what was approved out of committee, because I think that was a little confusing at the Legal and Finance, but the event permit attached tonight is for 1 year and 1 year only. There is a letter saying that they would like, Summer Nights would like to see a 3 year, but my understanding is that the City Council tonight was only going to be approving this for 1 year. Thank you.
So just to clarify, we have 4 additional lights, and before we go to the additional lights, the motion on the floor is for a 3 year with the stipulation as outlined by the Chief of Police. So just so we're all on the same page, and we'll continue the conversation here momentarily. We'll go to Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I ask David or Sandy a question, please, on the latest layout?
Go ahead and state your question.
My question is, isn't this a 2013 redo? I mean, what are the major differences that we're looking at? I think this plan has been tested before, in my knowledge.
Yeah, the only difference is that we're not going to use any of the 600 block of St. Joe. In 2013, we used the 600 and the 700 block. And because we're moving all of the kids' activities to Main Street Square, we won't need to close the St. Joe until 5:30. And it's essentially exactly the same footprint we had in 2013, minus the kids' activities.
So in my view, and I don't think I'm incorrect here, that we have had some experience with this plan before, and we could go for a 3-year permit with experience in the past.
Yes, the only real difference would be that when we set the stage in place in 2013, obviously St. Joe was closed. And so this year, the stage will sit back beyond St. Joseph Street, so we would only need about 10 minutes of assistance probably from the police department to get the stage tucked into the spot, and then once it's in place, it won't interfere with traffic on St. Joseph Street. So that would really be the only difference, is that that area in front of the stage while we're setting up would be open to traffic, but
So I'd like my fellow council members to consider that when they're thinking about the 3-year permit. That's all I had, Sandy, but I would also like to commend this group on the work you've done. You couldn't have convinced me 10 years ago that we'd have thousands of people downtown on a Thursday night in Rapid City, you know, with 2 stages and Art Alley as a connector and some of the incredible things that are going on. And I've worked on a lot of events, and I've been in your shoes, and I've come to this council and said, we're going to give you our summer. We're going to work all summer. We're giving you this gift, and you're saying no? Are you saying, well, we'll put it off, we won't give you 3 years? I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's right, because your volunteerism is exceptional. What you guys have done for this town and been questioned and had letters to the editor just trashing the event, that really doesn't set well with me. and because I know where you've been. And so I commend you on what you've done and that you've stood strong and come up with a conciliatory 10% to the Downtown Association. Very smart. And I would vote for the 3-year permit. Thank you.
Thank you. And we now deem it pertinent to go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, and I appreciate that because people know that I'm philosophically and morally against the city being in the tank to drink alcohol in the streets and close it up. That being said, I came here tonight prepared to vote on, which was at Legal and Finance. I voted to approve this as a 1-year plan. Special permits, we got to understand, special permits are exactly what they are. They're special permits. We're making this almost like and I think if you would have listened to our city attorney, we just had this earlier conversation about doing things because we think we can just do something. People come here with an expectation. The people that do not like this, the people that businesses may be obstructed or whatever, I think Ms. Cooney had made regards to that. Not everybody's happy with this. So not everybody knows that all of a sudden we're going to come here and we're going to put the ball under one of these shells and we're going to pull it up and see which one it is. That's not the way the process works. The process works, you applied for a 1-year permit. That's what we should be considering, not a 3-year permit. There's nothing wrong with a 1-year permit. And the reason they're special permits is they don't have to have overhead costs. They don't have to have security costs. They don't have to have all the intense costs that someone that has a license has to have. A license, I believe, I'm not sure what the cost of a beer license is right now, but the reason you have a beer license is to have all that. And the special permits are made for specific time frames. They're not made for, infinity or whatever. I would be more than welcome to look at the 1 year and look at it again. I was one of the guys that originally approved this with coming back and looking at it each year because things change. People change. The businesses change. Their needs change. So 1 year is appropriate to me. 3 years after like a bait and switch type thing is not appropriate. There are people here that may not agree with this that aren't here tonight that don't have any clue that this is happening. I just think that's not part of the way that council should do business. It sets a bad precedent, and it's a bad process. It was approved as 1 year at Legal and Finance. It came forward as 1 year. The application was requested as 1 year, as it says on it. If somebody can tell me different, but that's my feelings on it. I think we're convoluting the message. Let's get on with it. Let's do the 1 year, move it on, and let these people get on with their lives. There's nothing wrong with it. It's been working just fine. And when you're looking at changing a process midstream, I just think it's bad business. It's a bad thing for this council to get in the habit of doing. Thank you.
We'll go to Alderman Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I ask the city attorney a question?
You may.
To the point that Alderman Weifenbach brought up where this has been advertised on our meeting minutes as a 1 year, and now we're proposing 3. We looking at any issues on that?
Well, I looked at the item on the agenda, and it doesn't specify 1 year or 3 years. It just says approve the event permit. If you look at the attachments, the actual event application that looks like it was maybe completed by the police department and submitted to you was for 2015 and just specifies. But if you then look at the next attachment, which is from Summer Nights, they are requesting that it's for 3 years. I'm trying to remember what exactly happened at the Legal and Finance Committee. I don't know that it was really specified. I know there was some question about whether or not they could review it. I agreed that I would look at that and have a better answer for this evening, and I think it was just moved along. I don't recall what specifically the vote was. So I think the fact that I don't know who filled out the application, but I think anybody looking at all of the documents attached would be on notice if this went to court that they were seeking potentially 3 years or that 3 years was an option. But I can also see that, the application for the special event just indicates 2015 when you look at just the application. However, I will say again, the attaching documents do reflect that they are requesting 3 years. The important thing is that basically people are put on notice of what you're discussing and what the possibility is. And because of that, I think you could argue they were put on notice.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to have the floor back if I could, but I'd yield to Carl because I think he wants to add to this if I could. Mr.
Chief?
Mayor.
I just wanted to clarify that the special event application was completed by Sandra Schwann, and when she submitted it, she also included the memo or the letter to the mayor and council, kind of going into further detail with her intention. And that's where the 3-year request is. It says we would respectfully request that this plan be approved for the next 3 years.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate the groups getting together. I mean, that's basically what we asked them to do. I mean, we said, you guys go get this thing figured out, and they got it figured out, and they brought us a plan, and I greatly appreciate that. I'm comfortable that this plan, I mean, it's been tested. I believe it was in 2013, all of St. Joe was closed, and then one other year it was alternated. And I think the hitch in the giddy up or the concern by our public service departments is the people crossing Main Street, but it's worked in the past, and and I haven't gotten a single email. I'm sure I will now, but I haven't gotten a single email from anybody asking me to not support this, and I just think that with everything we've been through, and we've got an agreement, and they want to do it they want to stick to this agreement for 3 years, and we have some flexibility on behalf of public safety if the police chief needs to amend something. So I'm going to support. I'm prepared to vote tonight for the 3-year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's brad.estes@rcgov.org. We'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a substitute motion for clarification that we approve this event permit for 1 year.
Okay, we have a substitute motion to approve this event permit for 1 year with the stipulation that was in the first.
As I
item.
stated, Mayor, that stipulation, you can say it, but the fire chief and the police chief already have that authority. So in my opinion, it's just glossing over or trying to put flowers on a pig or something. It's
Oh, we don't want to do that.
the fire
All right.
chief and the,
We
lipstick
have a
on
motion
pig,
by
yeah.
you and a second by Roberts was it you that seconded it? Did you second it? For one year. Did you want to retain the floor? Okay. Alderman Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do believe it's lipstick on a pig. Anyway, yeah, I guess I won't be supporting this motion, and it's not because I'm not in case it does pass. It's not because I'm not supporting summer nights. I'm actually supporting summer nights more by saying I'm for the 3-year, and that's only because we waste a lot of staff time going back and forth with this all the time. These folks have come together. They've gotten a consensus now. Peace is there. Let's not interrupt it. The fire and the police can always pull this if they do have a problem with it. It always be reviewed. I don't like micromanaging other people's events. I don't think it's our job. That's my personal opinion. I guess I don't see any reason I don't want to be voting on this again next year, having the same discussion that we're going to have, and where I don't see it's not going to go through. We'll just have the same discussion. We'll all just keep talking about it and yada, yada, yada. I think they've come to a pretty good compromise. It's been tried. It's been set up here before. This has actually been in this location before, I think, with minimal problems. We made a few accommodations to the business owners downtown, which I think is vital. It was the biggest reason for this discussion in the first place. And they went forth and they did exactly what we asked them to do, and now we're kind of messing with them again. And I personally just think we should go for the 3-year and move on down the road. This is a great event, and especially considering next year is going to be a really big year. So anyway, that's my opinion. So if I'm voting no, it's not because I'm voting against summer nights or anybody else up here. I just want to make sure that the reasons I said before. Thanks.
Thank you. That's chad.lewis@rcgov.org. Go to Richie Nordstrom. Richie, you have the floor.
Yeah, make sure they put a T in the middle of that first name there, dot Nordstrom. Where the confusion is, just for the mayor's benefit, is that when it did come out of committee, it did have on the summary that the Arts and Entertainment Festival for Thursday night would be May through August of 2015 only. So if the original motion had to do with going into 3 years, that's where the confusion was, and on my part. That's where I was confused. And I like the idea of doing a multi-year permit anyway, because I've advocated that this is the area that we need to get to, is to have some type of a plan that I could support for multi-years. And I've always advocated that ever since this whole annual review came up. So I'm going to be voting no on the amendment or the substitute motion, and hopefully and ultimately support the multi-year permit. Thank you.
Question's been called. We are going to proceed with the substitute motion on this being a one-year permit, so it'll be May 28 to June 17, 2015. It's a substitute motion. Everyone understands it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Here.
Roll call, please.
Wright. No. Estes. No. Nordstrom. No. Roberts. Yes. Weifenbach. Scott. Yes. Drew. No. Lewis. No. Doyle. Aye. 4 to 5, motion fails.
Okay, we're back to the original motion. Everyone understands it. The original motion is for a 3-year permit. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Here. Roll call, please.
Estes. Nordstrom. Roberts. Weifenbach. Scott. Drew. Lewis. Doyle. Wright. 5 to 4, motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Great discussion. We are now on item number 38. Alderman Chad Lewis. Item 38.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 38 is to acknowledge the 2014 sales tax report. I move to acknowledge.
Motion by Lewis, second by Scott. Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is for Pauline Sumption, the finance officer, please. And Pauline, I'm not sure if this is going to be tied in with number 39 as well, but in general, the sales tax collection that we're seeing here, can you extrapolate that out to give us an idea about how much will be going to the Vision Fund, the CIP, and how that works, how that money is divided up?
Okay, so if I understand your question correctly, this report is showing about $19.6 million in sales tax revenue going to the general fund. That exact same amount will go into the newly created CIP Vision Fund, and it would get split in half. So about $9.8 million would go into the Vision account, and $9.8 million would go into the CIP account.
And where I'm going on these two items here, and I think the sales tax report is where I'm headed on the amount of money that we'll be able to pay towards the bond or bonds, partnerships, et cetera, that has to do with the Civic Center money that we have to set aside each year, for like, what is it, $10 million? So this is looking like it's very achievable.
Correct. We, on a cash basis, we received about $11.7 million in the Vision Fund in 2014. And so if that continues to grow at about, and that's what I actually estimated, which I'm not usually quite that good at it, but so if that continues to grow, the 3%, you're looking at another $300,000 each year. So we'll be about $12 million in 2015 that would go to the Vision account, which would be more than the estimated $11.4 million we would need annually for the debt service payment.
And that's what I was trying to achieve, is make sure that we're going to be on the plus side by the estimates with the sales tax collection.
And we will be.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Floor has been yielded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of acknowledgement, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 39. Alderman Lewis.
I'll take that for you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Item number 39 is to acknowledge the November 2014 General Fund Cash Balance Report. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Wright. Any discussion? Any discussion?
No,
Somebody-
Mayor,
Can we proceed?
yeah,
Okay.
everything's been answered. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 42.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 42 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign amendment number 1 to the State of South Dakota Historic Preservation Allocation Award, SD 14-022, between the State of South Dakota and the Rapid City Historic Preservation Commission, extending the grant end date to August 15th, 2015. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Drew. Alderman Richie Nordstrom. Go to you.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I'm bringing this up, because I believe it's tied in with item 43 as well. And essentially, my question will, and I apologize to the staff for not bringing this up on the Legal and Finance Committee. It was an oversight on my part. And what I wanted to make sure that in the communications that we have with the people that are in the Historic Preservation District, we'll be getting information some way, somehow. And I had a brief explanation about that. So if I can ask this question of our planning director, community planning director, Brett Limbaugh.
Okay.
What are we going to be doing to help the citizens within this district?
Well, in order to administer a historic preservation district, you have to do a survey of the properties to determine whether or not they're contributing or not. The last survey that was performed was done in 1995, so we're well overdue. 20 years is a long time not to have that resurvey done. So we've entered into a contract with a group that specializes in performing those surveys. And so these items are tied together. You are correct. The first item is to carry forward $30,000 of grant money from the state to August, and those dollars will be used to complete several tasks within this survey. And task 1 actually is a project kickoff and public meeting. And so they'll catch them right up front before they go out and start doing the field survey and the photography. And at the very end, there's a phase 4, and they'll have kind of a wrap-up public meeting also. So it's folks out there will be more than informed of the activities that are going on there. We don't know whether or not the district itself is going to expand or shrink, or we have no idea until they complete the survey work.
Thank you. Mr. Limbaugh, I appreciate your answers. And the staff, as I understand, is working on a website as well?
Yeah, our commission actually had tasked a consultant to prepare a separate website from the city. And they made some progress on that, and I'm not sure if they're going to continue through with that. Now that we're going to get a new city website, it might be better just to host their information on the city's website. So I can get back with you on that progress.
I appreciate it. And I can go either way on that website. I think that'll be very helpful because my largest concern is whether the property owner is well enough to inform so that they understand what is contributing and what is not contributing to the district. And I believe with these ultimately 4 steps that are going to be taking place to get this in motion, I'm sure there will be somebody that's going to be still slipping through the cracks and won't understand what we mean on this, but at least we have some better resources to offer to the public. So I applaud you and your staff for coming up with something.
Thank you very much. I'll pass that along.
I think this raises an important need for a clarification, Brett. When my property, for example, is resurveyed, it's not going to, when a resurvey is completed, it's not going to include 10 additional properties. We're just determining where the lot lines of my property is, right? So when we're doing a resurvey of the historical district, are we saying that this could result in an expansion of the historical district, that it could, for example, go north of Maine, or it could go further into downtown or go into Old Robbinsdale? What do you mean when you say we wouldn't know what the boundaries were? You understand my question?
Yeah, I think so. I'll answer it this way. When they're doing a survey, what they're surveying is the architecture of the building. So what they're going to do is they're going to go into historical archives and they're going to look at old photographs, and then they're going to have to make a determination whether or not that property has been improved over several years and whether or not the historical character of that house has been damaged to such a degree that it's no longer contributing. So, for example, when you ask people at the state office, if I change the siding on this house, is that going to tip this property over so it's no longer contributing? The answer we always get back from them is, well, it's actually a number of things. It may be the roofing materials and the siding and the windows and so on and so forth. So it's very helpful for us to have an expert go out in the field and do a survey today, a snapshot, compare it with what was there previously, and then determine whether or not that particular property will remain contributing or non-contributing. In addition, there's an environs, which is an area around the historic district. So that area may or may not expand, kind of depending on what's in it. And so I don't know if that answers your question directly, but there are sometimes along the fringe of the historic district some properties that they may want to now include in the district that weren't previously included.
Thank you. We'll go to Alderman Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. You basically asked the question of Mr. Limbaugh that I did, so that just for clarification, that's not what I understood a week ago. So that's changed a little bit, because I was under the impression that when this survey was commissioned, that they were given the boundaries in which they were going to go out and look at the historic district and then make that determination. What you're saying now is they're going to look across the street when they're on the boundary line.
Yeah, I think they're tasked with looking at those environs. And so when you look at the original survey that was done back in 1995, they may have a different opinion of what's across the street. And they may determine that it's really not something that should belong in the environs, but something that should actually be incorporated into the district. And so without that professional level of inventory, I can't promise you that that wouldn't happen. I kind of doubt it. Generally, these things have a tendency to shrink because over years the total number of contributing structures usually drops as improvements are made with or without building permits.
But as we all get older, some of our more recent houses become antiques, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on if you want to start including houses from the 50s, I guess. And in my mind, I grew up in one. I don't consider it historic, but I think some people would at this point.
Thank you. I yield the floor, Mayor.
Floor has been yielded. We'll go to Alderman Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question also for Mr. Limbaugh. Brett, well, one of the things I want to point out in Sarah's memorandum, I think she has some dates wrong. She's using the 2014 rather than 2015. But is the historic portion of downtown is right now, is that area that's in the historic district, is that considered part of the West Boulevard Historic District?
That's a separate district, so we're only going to survey the West Boulevard district this term.
Okay.
We would have to do a separate project for the downtown historic district.
So then my question is this, is if we are authorizing the mayor to sign this and it's for a resurvey of the West Boulevard Historic District, how could it possibly expand?
I don't anticipate that it will, but I can't guarantee you that.
And you might have answered the question earlier, but every time we start talking about historic stuff, my things start ringing between my ears. So, so I'm just trying to figure out how this could, because I think the mayor's ears perked up. I mean, is this going to grow? And I don't know how it can grow if we're only approving a survey within the existing boundaries.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert in historic preservation, so I'm sure there are a number of factors that they're going to look at.
Don't feel bad, I haven't found one yet.
Yeah, they'll come back to us with a justification one way or the other, and then it's going to be up to this council to determine, what you want to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 43.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 43 is authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign an agreement between the City of Rapid City and Rosin Development, LLC Professional Services to resurvey the West Boulevard District not to exceed $30,000. I move approval.
Motion by Lewis, second by Wright. Any discussion? Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
I just have one more question for Mr. Limbaugh. When we do get this surveyed and find out what the final boundaries are, I assume that information is going to go up onto the website. But do we need to have signage up in that area as well?
Well, we do have new street signage that went up, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago. So if we need to put additional signage up, we'd do that. I kind of like what they did. I think they're legible. I think it's clearly defined where the boundaries of the district are with a new street sign. So, yeah, we'll consider that as well.
Thank
Actually,
you.
it's probably a question for Dale, but whether or not he wants to put more street signs up, but I'm sure he'd be more
not.
than happy to.
The reason I'm chuckling is because every once in a while, we'll still get some homeowner coming up in here to the council and say, I didn't know anything about it. But we've got all this signage, we've got all this information out there, and still we come up with people that are not aware of what we're trying to address for them. Thank you.
Brad, I would like to, there's no lights, I'd like to ask a question, and this is I think I can safely say this on behalf of all of us. If the environs are going to potentially expand, will the people that, whose properties may be in the expansion area, will they be notified so that we don't have a buzzsaw potentially at an upcoming council meeting?
Yeah, I mean, there's a public process involved here.
There's a process.
Yeah, so
not just one hearing at a city council meeting. There's a notification process. Okay.
There will be, and our Preservation Commission has talked at great length about doing an annual notification of all the property owners.
Okay.
Because they do change hands quite often, and so you know what we send out today is going to have to be sent out, probably in 6 months or a year.
All right. Alderman Chad Lewis.
Just to point out, I think we are going to have people come up here anyway. It doesn't matter because we did the same thing with the Civic Center, and people are still saying we didn't inform them enough. So you can, I imagine people will keep showing up. So just letting you know, don't be surprised when they do show up.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 44, Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 44 is acknowledge Alliance Travel Tourism Advocates update on Powwow Grounds project and approve extension of time to March 31st, 2015 to secure funding for the project. I'd like to have a few questions for the applicant, please.
Why don't you go ahead and yield the floor?
I'll yield the floor, but I want to...
Gotta give a second.
Okay, do we have I'm going to ask for a motion, and then we can
Well,
come
my
back.
motion is, I have some questions before I vote, so.
The process is you will go first to identify a motion. and
I'll
we
make a
can- we'll
motion
come
to
back
deny
it.
then.
Okay. We have a motion to deny.
Yes.
We have a second by Amanda Scott for discussion, and we'll go to you, Chad.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Cook, if you could please, some questions for you. And I realize you may not be, I hate to put you on the spot, I try to give you a little warning, but I know you're not necessarily versed in this as well as your wife, but a couple questions for you. I guess, is there a plan do we have a plan, I don't see it in the information attached, for the long-term care of this facility? Is that, do we have a business plan that we've had exposure to at this point?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. How much money do you currently have?
From the Vision 2012, of course, and then, as I stated, Mark just sent notice that 150 from the Shakopee, Mdewakanton, 100,000 from Oglala Sioux Tribe, and it's on the floor of the council for Cheyenne River for 100,000. So secured 250,000, probably 350,000. So we're about halfway there.
So, okay, so I mean, you have about $1 million total. If we put in our 660 that's left, basically, that'd be about $1 million. Okay, so when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the letter that was written by Pat Wist, they're trying to cut some of the things off of the thing. When I look at it, you're just going to have a facility that doesn't have a restroom, I guess, facility. Do you have a plan for addressing that for your events? You're just going to go with the porta potty thing, I assume?
I assume.
Which is, I don't have a problem with that, actually. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's going to be in phases as it's sustainable.
But so you'll have no landscaping in the first phase, too, I see. Yeah. Is that going to build it? Are you going to be open for business?
Yes.
If you do the first after the first phase, is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay. If you've reduced the seating by 30%, which I assume is going to drop your revenue number projections, considerably as well. Has that been accounted for anywhere? Does anybody know of?
Yes, Daphne and Mark have accounted.
And so
for
it's
that
still,
with-
the facility
yeah.
still will be able to operate under that,
Yes.
under those conditions?
Yes.
Okay. What about this new facility I'm hearing about that's going in Chamberlain? That's a new powwow grounds being done in Chamberlain. Is anybody aware of this
No,
facility?
it's not a powwow grounds.
It's not
You
powwow
know,
grounds? Oh, okay, it's not in powwow grounds?
No.
I was misinformed then.
Just to understand and be clear, this project, the HISAPA Interpretive Center for Performing Arts, is not just a powwow grounds. It's a venue for artists. It's a venue for interpretation, storytelling, a living history village. So there's a lot of different components. Within their business plan, they talked about, eventually having concessions and, and having Lakota culinary foods, ethnobotany, involving the youth, the community elders. So it's a fully developed concept where it's not just a powwow. There's going to be a lot of other components that will bring in revenue. And also, with being adjacent to the Journey Museum, it's going to, boost, the partnership with the Journey Museum, with with different exhibits, we talked to with them about, cost sharing, landscaping, and in marketing costs. And so there's different opportunities to partner with different folks. I just ran out and talked with the Summer Nights people and with the Main Street Square. So there's a lot of different possibilities for developing these partnerships, but nothing will come to fruition unless we get that 90-day extension to be able to prove that we can raise the money, which we will, and to move forward with. I think it's going to be a boost to the economy here in Rapid City.
Excuse me, sir, you say you're about $300,000 short right now, and you're anticipating getting $300,000 in 90 days?
Easy.
Okay, because you've had basically 10 years, correct, or 12 years with extensions?
Yeah, I mean, there was very little philanthropy in Rapid City. I mean, we're going out into, to the tribes to seek investment with other things. So we've exhausted almost every possibility within Rapid City for philanthropy, which is disappointing since, the amount of economic development that the tribes and our Indian people bring into the community. So I think this is something that, this is a project that's going to be self-sustainable once it gets, its feet on the ground, and something that's going to be, our story to being able to share with people, that cross-cultural sharing within the community that's so important.
I guess that's my biggest point bringing this up is, I voted enthusiastically for it, supported you last year when you asked for another year's extension, and I just think that we've given quite a few extensions at this point. I just don't know at what point we're going to have to, cut it off, because I know like I said, it's been, 10, 12 years that you guys have had to raise the money, and I just don't know how you're going to do it in another 90 days, but I guess, I really wish it would go through. It just, we have to some point, make a decision one way or the other. It's our job, but if you can do it, more power to you, I guess. I obviously support this.
Well,
I supported you last year. I can support you for 90 days. I just don't know how you're going to get it done in 90 days. I don't know if that's just like giving you false hope or whatever. That's my personal opinion, so.
No, we can do it.
Thanks.
Alderwoman Darla Drew. Now, if you want to make a substitute motion or an amendment, it needs to be done at the beginning of the conversation before you speak too much. Throwing that out there.
As the new person, I appreciate that coaching from the mayor. Don't talk too much and say emotion, whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to ask someone on this dais, since I'm new, and or maybe it's Pauline, how much does the ATA group have to raise before they have access to the city funds? What is the amount they have to have before we can put a shovel in the ground?
I actually would have to review the agreement to be certain, and Joel may be better versed on the agreement. But the city has $667,000, I think, left in the allocation for them. They have to have at least the full amount that was bid out, or that the bid is to award a bid in the bank before we can actually put a shovel in the ground. So if the estimate is about 1.6 million, they're still looking at a minimum of about $1 million that they need to raise in total. But I believe there's some language in the agreement that they actually have to have more than that for contingencies, and that's what I would refer to Joel on.
Joel.
Thank you, Mayor. The total is the amount shown, although I heard Mr. Cook say that it was maybe that Pat Wiss had decreased one of the line items, but the document that's linked, that's what I have. It's $1,310,660.45. So
they have to raise.
That's just to construct it. I mean, the other part of this that really and Lewis discussed is the ongoing maintenance. Even if they raise the money to fund it, now under the agreements it says they'll be responsible for the ongoing maintenance and operation of it. But again, if they don't have any revenues on which to operate or maintain it, obviously it's on city property. That's probably going to fall to us. I know I had a discussion, and this was probably almost a year ago, with Daphne and Mark Van Norman, and at the time they were looking at trying to form an alliance with the United Tribal College, and that they would have the wherewithal to continually maintain it. What I hear tonight is that they're looking at this is going to generate revenue, and then we're going to use that to maintain it. The concern would be if it doesn't generate revenue, or it takes a while to generate revenue, how are you going to pay for maintenance and all of that in the interim?
But did I hear correctly when Alderman Lewis said they needed to raise $300,000 more within the 90-day period? So that would be $600,000. Is that correct? No?
I think that's about correct. What I heard him say is that they have $350,000 under commitment now, or believe they have. There's about $650,000 left in the city money. So maybe it's only 200, but well, no, it's $1 million. So it's about $300,000 that is left to be raised.
Well, I know there is some trepidation when going forward with this project, but having worked in American Indian projects and country for quite a while, I do know that my friends can produce under pressure, and it's a very common thing that these guys get it done when it comes right down to it. So, Robert, I'm hoping that you can go forward. I know that with your wife's situation, if someone doesn't know, and I'm going to just say it, she had to have her foot amputated over Christmas. Now that puts a real kibosh on getting things done. And thank you for coming and supporting this and representing her as best you can. I know my husband would just freak out if I asked him to represent me anywhere, so thank you for coming forward. And this is an important project. We are at a time in Rapid City history where we're looking at real healing, and I think this project could bring some of that to us. And I've watched the project all along and hoping that something like this, something really, really material would happen in the fundraising part. It sounds like you're getting that done. In the meantime, Robert and myself and the Town Association and the Main Street Square folks and Mayor Sam Quicker, we've been talking about maybe this summer just putting an Indian art market together on Tuesdays in the Main Street Square. It's got a lot of the things that this group is looking for, and it would give us that pilot test ground to see how the market would work, get you to work out some of those problems. It's got a stage, a PA, and a staff to help. So I think that's something that we can look at as a partnership going towards this summer. But I do want to encourage you to continue to raise that money, because that's what's going to get this council to vote in favor of this project. And so I'm going to vote for the 90-day extension and continue to work with the groups to make sure that you get a pilot program. And then when you can get that done, I think you'll raise even more money. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well said. We'll go to Alderman John Roberts.
If this will turn on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Robert, for coming forward with this. You know, I've supported this wholeheartedly from the beginning. And I think not only is there healing, but I think there's opportunity here. I think that with this business plan, we're going to give a lot of people an opportunity to get their art out in front of people. We're going to give people an opportunity to, and I don't want to say this badly, but be taken advantage of, being able to set their own goals, hours, time, and be able to work hard and get what they deserve. So I'm really impressed from where you are now compared to where you were a year ago. If this was a soccer complex, we'd be breaking ground now because you're way ahead of where they were when they broke ground. So I'm happy for what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to this happening, and I think it will happen, and you have my support 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Alderwoman Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been a full supporter ever since I got on City Council and visiting with Daphne. This is a great vision, and I do think Rapid City can definitely benefit. All of the citizens can benefit from it. My concerns with this have already been expressed by other council members up here, is that the time has already come and gone, and we've already done the extensions. So again, I'm not necessarily not in favor of a 90-day extension, but I'm in a position to ask what happens in 90 days or at the end of March if the funds are not readily available and we're ready to proceed. Are we looking at another extension? I was thinking about this ever since the Legal and Finance Committee meeting last week. We're all encouraged to plan out 5 years and to have a huge goal. And then we're encouraged to make little benchmark steps to get there. In thinking of this project over the last 10 years, I think the issue is that this great big vision has preceded like a huge forest, and no one's ever really stopped to take a look at the little sapling tree that needs to be nurtured in order to get the forest to take over the ground. And what I mean by that is, what I have not heard is I have not heard where are the programs that have occurred within the last 10 years to show that Native American artist support for this project. I know Alderwoman Drew has recently mentioned that Main Street Square, granted, that wasn't there 10 years ago, and look how well that's done. But now that jumping or pedestal is there, that might be an excellent place to start bringing in this open artist market. I know Richie Nordstrom on last Tuesday at the Legal and Finance Committee meeting mentioned the Journey Museum partnership. You've also got the Doll that might be able to partnership. There's also many of the park systems, and as we already had a huge discussion earlier, permits are readily available to be applied for at the police department. So you can apply for a permit in order to get some of these open market. I think the main thing is that the major focus over the last 10 years, from what I can hear, and I know definitely the last 3 years, the major focus has been raising this money. And yet, that's all I see, and I don't see a lot of progress. So my big question, if you could even answer that, where have the other programs been in Rapid City? Where have the open markets been done over the last 3 to 5 years? Where have there been trial programs or trials that show us that there is that interest in the Native American artist community coming together and showing that support and pitching in and getting this? Because I have to admit, it's a great project, it's a great vision, I'm in full support of it, but Daphne has been the face of this project for the last 3 years, if not the last 10. So my big concern is, are we extending this again at the end of March? Or is March the deadline? And honestly, I think Alderman Lewis kind of said it under his breath, but a lot of times you almost have to shut one door if it's not working in order to open up another door to move this project down that road to get there. So again, I'm in support of this project. I just don't see the road open to get there in 90 days. But I am in full support, and if the substitute motion is made to give you a 90-day extension, from you standing up at the podium today saying, we work great under pressure and we're going to get it, I'm cheering behind you all the way. So, more power to you. I yield the floor.
Alderwoman Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Motion on the floor currently is for
To
denial.
acknowledge the report and to deny the request for extension.
Okay, I will make a substitute motion to grant the 90-day extension.
Okay, we have
Thank you.
a motion by Doyle and a second by Estes, and you have the floor.
And I think we have a lot of valid points being brought up here. I mean, we've had lots of discussions. I've discussed this with Daphne over the last 4 years. I think one of the things that's missing right now and would be extremely helpful if we can get this 90-day window is to reintroduce that project and the drawings and the vision again, because we have new people up here. I remember sitting through that several years ago, and it made an impact. It was really something that I wanted to get behind, just to really add that element to the community. A lot of dreaming, a lot of planning had gone into it. You know, and this really emphasizes one of the challenges with the Vision Fund process is that it's most often when it's not being used for major city projects, it's normal people that are going through this. And a lot of times they don't have the means or the connections to hire an attorney or somebody to go and manage this for them and go, hire a professional fundraiser and do all this. So, now that feeder to the fire things are happening, and I think we see it, I would hate to just cut them off right now when they're finally producing. And we all know that sometimes, maybe this was a great idea 10 years ago, but it just wasn't the right time in Rapid City's history, and perhaps now is that time. They're gaining interest. I would hate to see that rewarded with, sorry, we're gonna yank your funding. But my challenge to everybody, and I'm sure you can convey this message, is when it comes back in March, if we can get this passed, bring the full presentation so that we can all be renewed and see that vision that you have. And number two, if you really feel you have that momentum building, don't sell yourself short. I mean, go back to what the grand scale of the project and see if you can generate some more interest, because once I've seen that with past projects in the city, as soon as there's some commitment from other than the city, then nobody wants to be the first one. So it starts to snowball, and I think that's going to be important. But the real question is, if we've gone this long, what's 90 extra days? I mean, it's cold. There's momentum building. We're obviously in for a hard winter, and I think this would be it'd be a great way to kick off the spring. So I'd like my colleagues to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to support the substitute motion to extend for the 90 days. The reasons why I'm supporting of that is because that Mr. Cook, you did have that communication with the Journey Museum leadership, and they appreciate that communication, that opportunity that you gave them to make them aware of what you have available and what you have available for offering to the Journey Museum. I'm looking also at this project being an enhancement for the Journey Museum, working in a partnership. And the reason I'm saying that is because in the longer scheme of things, I know the DOT is going to be doing something with that bridge that's over on I-190 at some point. That whole bridge has got to be changed, and the underpass and everything, and it's going to be an easier off ramp for the people to get over to the Civic Center and hopefully the expansion, and we're going to be seeing some people taking advantage of that. And that will, I hope, bring in more audience, not only to the Civic Center, but to the Journey Museum, which will in essence help you folks out as well. And with all those partnerships coming to play, I'm crossing my fingers that by March you will have that money in the bank for us. And again, I really appreciate what you've done for communicating with the Journey Museum staff. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Richie. Alderman Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a problem supporting this 90-day extension. Where I see the problem with the project right now is that, I mean, we witnessed it with the Horseman Pool. I mean, we've got these vision funds, and the budgets are laid out on year one of a 5-year deal, and it gets extended. And I don't want to exaggerate, but we roughly seen a pool that was estimated to be $4 million. We cost $8. And I look at, okay, well, I didn't want to exaggerate, but anyway, I look at this, and I have a lot of respect for your Pat Wiss and his work, and originally I think 6 years ago the estimate was $1.3 million, and if that goes by the way of the pool, I mean, you could be talking 2.6, a couple $1 million, but instead of going up, we're taking things out. And we're reducing the scope of the phase one to try to make it work. And I went and watched the recording of Mr. Cook, and I applaud you doing the work for your wife. You're a trooper and doing a great job. But when you say if we get it built, it's sustainable. But if we're taking 30% of the seating capacity away, I'm just worried that the number one thing that causes businesses to fail is to go in undercapitalized. And although we're not doing the operational part, I'm just worried that there's enough money to build enough capital structure there to make it work. I mean, and if you want to, can you respond to that there?
Go ahead and ask him your question.
So, I mean, how do you guys feel about? Because that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Is that the buying capacity of the city's share of the money has diminished greatly towards this project, and that just means that you guys got to keep raising your portion keeps going up. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the initial, like when you look at the scale and the 30% reduction in the amphitheater, but it doesn't account for the traffic that will go into where the artists will be set up, the Living History Village. So that, I think that will be offset because it's going to be a venue that's open every day. So there's going to be continual traffic and marketing of the event. I mean, I worked at Crazy Horse Memorial for a couple of years as a cultural fair specialist. There's literally dozens and dozens of buses that come to Crazy Horse, go through the cultural center, the museum, and still are looking for stuff to do. This is going to provide an opportunity for people to stay longer within the community, more things for them to do. There's not an interpretive program anywhere to be found in this state. There isn't any. This is going to provide that opportunity. So although it'll scale down a little bit to offset some of those costs, it's going to be open every day, so the traffic will be ongoing with other types of sustainable revenue coming in. Okay. T-shirt sales, food, the artist sales, the Living History Village, all of those different things, and also the tour opportunities that will generate from it too. I mean, we're going to be able to provide docents and guides for that type of stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you. I guess the best way I can explain what we've experienced with our buying power and our projects we've been putting out to bid, it's kind of like being on a treadmill and somebody's got their finger on the incline button and they're not letting go, and it's just getting to be a tougher road to hoe. And I just don't see it. I just don't see the number. I mean, this project being much different than that. I understand they've reduced it by about 35%, but that could be very optimistic in my mind, given that they're 6-year-old numbers. So I have no problem supporting the 90 days, and I appreciate all the work everybody's doing on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I sat through a lot of the Vision product, the Horseman Pool, both the Horseman Pools, the play center and the pool, the swim center, several of them, softball fields, soccer fields. The soccer field started out at $13 million. They didn't raise a penny for years. I'm not sure what they've raised recently, but I know that they put $1 million just into bringing water out there. And one of the questions that always does arise is the project underfunded? And I would not disagree with that. And I wish that when this project comes forward, that we relook at it again. And maybe we have to change some things, but then we should fund it. We should fund the whole darn thing and make sure it gets done right. We're looking at spending $180 million on expansion on the Civic Center that won't give anywhere near the economic impact that what would happen if Rapid City could bring a Native American cultural center to this city. It's been lacking for a long time. Nobody wants to talk about it. It may be tough, but I'm telling you what, the limited investment that we would get if you were actually to sit down and pencil out an ROI on this thing, in the long term, in the long run, I think that it would wouldn't surprise me, but I think it would surprise a lot of other people. And all you have to do is look at the Civic Center's numbers right now when you look at the LNI tournament. It's the second biggest thing that 300,000 people come for the stock show, and I think it's like 59,000 that come for the LNI. And one thing they don't have here is Native American culture, which is a biggest lacking thing in our community here. And I don't know how we get it going, how we do it. I think, and I applaud Daphne's tenacity to try to bring something forward. And I understand it's not always that easy to bring it forward, as we've experienced with nobody wanted to bring initiative measure for a civic center, but we voted it through. And I wish we would have grilled them like we grilled Mr. Cook there about the questions about what's it going to produce, what's it going to do, what's the economic impact, all these things. I will support the 90-day, and when it comes back in 90 days, I will support whatever it takes to make something in this community happen that brings to light the Native American culture. It's a lost. I mean, I've been here since 1970, and I have a lot of Native American friends, but I still don't ever get a chance to really, see the culture. I'm German by trade. I go back to Germany, and I can see that culture. I live right here in one of the most beautiful places in the world and one of the most cultural places in the world, but yet there's not an opportunity for me to share that with any of my friends that come to Rapid City. I'm committed to helping you do whatever it takes to get this thing done. I understand it's tough. The softball thing was tough. The soccer thing was tough, but those guys never brought any money to the table that I know of, and I don't yet see what soccer is going to bring to the table. I don't want to underfund your project, as Mr. S. has alluded to. I support what Alderman Doyle said about this is important for our community. It's probably one of the most important things. I would put the Civic Center on a back burner to have this project or something in the realm of this project that would bring that culture to the city that people would actually be able to share with the tourists, the 2 million tourists that come here. They ain't going to come here to see the Civic Center. They come here to see the culture of the hills, the Mount Rushmore, the Crazy Horses. And if you spend time in the summertime at Mount Rushmore, Crazy Horse, or any of the tourist locations, you know that Rapid City misses that opportunity. So I think you guys have something here. I don't know what it is exactly, how you make it happen, but I hope that we can make it happen. And I hope that we'll be a part of how it ever happens. And if we continue to have this conversation for another 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'm willing to do that. So enough said. Thank you.
We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright.
I support the 90-day extension. I just wanted to say an old adage that I live by, and that is, I think what Brad and what some others said, that maybe we need to rethink and think bigger. But there was an old deal I live by: if you got a used car and the paper doesn't sell, take it out, raise the price, put it back in, and it sells. So maybe we need to dream a little bigger, and maybe we need to reinvent the wheel here. And I'm just saying, let's think on the next 90 days, there's got to be some serious fundraising. There's also got to be some serious thinking and planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Darla Drew.
One last thought. Thank you, Mayor, and everyone for your great discussion on this. To answer Amanda Scott, I think she had a question about has this ever been done? Has there ever been any markets here that we can look at? Really, the only thing that I can draw attention to is the gathering that was last year, and it was an Indian art market and music festival, and that happened in Main Street Square, and it's very successful. And that group is willing to talk to Robert, myself, and the people at Main Street Square to see that you guys are successful this summer. So just putting that out there, that it has been done successfully within the last year. It was their first event, but still it was very well attended and very well received. Thank you.
Thank you. So everyone understands the motion. The motion is to acknowledge the report and to grant a 90-day extension until March 31 of 2015. Everyone understands the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. We are now to the end of consent items, and we're going to take a brief recess. We'll reconvene at 8:30. We have reconvened our meeting. I will now open public comment for items 50 through 53. Items 50 through 53, I do not have any speaker request forms. Have I missed anyone? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. We are on item number 50, and we'll go to Amanda Scott, if you could read this into the record for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 50 is a second reading of ordinance number 6025, an ordinance repealing Chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to wards and precincts and adopting a new revised Chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Wright. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are now on item number 51. Amanda, would you read this also for us?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 51 is to confirm the reappointments of Gene Kesloff and Doug Jones to the Historic Preservation Commission and the appointment of Jody Harold Speck to a voting position. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Estes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are now on staff items, and Amanda, why don't you go ahead on this one too?
Thank you, Mayor. Presentation of the municipal referendum petitions regarding Resolution 2014-118, authorizing the issuance of sales tax obligations for the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center in an amount not to exceed $180 million in construction costs, and further authorizing certain officers of the city to approve, execute, and deliver agreements and documents relating to the obligations. This was passed by the Rapid City Common Council on the 1st of December 2014. Make a motion to acknowledge.
We have a motion to acknowledge the finance officer's presentation and a second by Darla Drew. Would you like to make a presentation?
I guess if you had time to read the agenda summary today, it's all in there, but if you didn't, I will just briefly go through it with you. We received the majority of the petitions on last Monday, and then I received a few more on Wednesday and Friday, I believe it was, and Charlene helped me go through those petitions. So we received a total of 164 petitions with 3,241 valid signatures. Of that 3,200, 2,418 had their voter registration spot checked, so we picked every 8 registered voter after we had already gone through the list, or 8 signature after we had already gone through the petitions. The 2,062 signatures were needed, and so effectively the resolution has been referred. Going back for a second, and it's not in the agenda summary, technically I'm not required at all to go through and spot check voter registration, but because of the importance of the issue, we chose to do so, which we have done that in the past also with some of the referred and initiated measures. Our agreement with Pennington County requires us to give them 60 days notice. It also prohibits us from having an election more than or less than 60 days before our annual election, which has already been set for June 2nd. So our time frame is basically March 10th through March 31st because it has to be on a Tuesday. So my recommendation would be to have the election on March 10th. Part of the reason for doing that, and I talked or emailed Donovan Broberg on this just to verify, and I also got estimates for the election from Julie Pearson, estimating cost of the election at $45,000 to $60,000 for a special election. But when construction inflation is anywhere from 4 to 8%, which is $600,000 to $1.2 million per year, or per month, I'm sorry, to me that justifies having the special election instead of waiting for 2 months. And I understand that there's still a chance that the referral will be successful and the action taken will not proceed, but I still think it would be in the best interest of the project and the city to go ahead with the March 10th date.
Well, right now we have a motion on the floor, and that's just for acknowledgement of the finance officer's presentation. You're not being asked to approve or deny anything, so let's proceed to a vote on that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 53 is to set the special election for March 10th, 2015 for the referral of the resolution of 2014-118, and I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Wright. Any discussion? Alderman Richie Nordstrom. Richie?
Thank you, and hopefully I gave Pauline a heads up on this question about early voting. Will there be an opportunity, and if so, when?
We are required by state statute to allow 15 days early voting for municipal issues.
Thank you.
Will absentee ballots be automatically sent to military members, or will they have to request? Because that's not a lot of time to get a ballot back.
They actually still have to request an absentee ballot. Depending, they could actually request that at any time, and they could, as part of their application, request all municipal ballots. So if they request one for this one, they would automatically get sent one for the June election. But they are required on an annual basis to request the absentees.
So if they did that with the November elections and they checked the box of please send me the future absentees, then they're okay.
I don't think it's just a blank future absentees. I think it has to be in that same calendar year. And I would have to double check that because we don't deal with the November election because that's a county election, where with this one we would have some absentee ballots here at the city. Obviously, if the ballots are done earlier, we would open it up earlier, but we're only required to do the 15 days.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Last call. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. We're now on public hearing items 54 through 56. I do not have any speaker request forms, so the public hearing is now open and closed. Can we have a motion on items 54 through 56?
Move to approve.
By Scott, second by John Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Bill list, Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no additions to the bill list, so the total is that which is before you at $5,705,462.51.
Motion by Scott, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We have a motion to adjourn. Motion by Scott, second by Drew. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We're adjourned. Happy New Year, everyone, and it's 8:36 p.m.